أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الذين ينفقون في السراء والضراء والكاظمين الغيظ والعافين عن الناس والله يحب المحسنين والذين إذا فعلوا فاحشة أو ظلموا أنفسهم ذكروا الله فاستغفروا لذنوبهم ومن يغفر الذنوب إلا الله ولم يصروا على ما فعلوا وهم يعلمون أولئك جزاؤهم مغفرة من ربهم أولئك جزاؤهم مغفرة من ربهم وجنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها ونعم أجر العاملين. But first the translation. Those who spend in prosperity and adversity, and those who suppress anger and pardon men, and Allah loves those who do good. And those who, when they commit a foul deed or wrong themselves, remember Allah and implore forgiveness for their sins, and who can forgive sins except Allah, and do not knowingly persist in what they do. It is these whose reward is forgiveness. It is these whose reward is forgiveness from their Lord, and gardens beneath which this, I can't read the word here. Rivers, yes, I'm sorry. The R appeared to be like F, this confused me. So, and gardens beneath which rivers flow, wherein they shall abide, and excellent is the reward of good workers. I remember we have partly covered, I think at least, we have partly covered the first verse which I recited, that is, الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ فِي السَّرَّاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ, those who spend how is translated? In prosperity and in adversity, is it? Yes, in prosperity and adversity. Now I should like to go in more detail into this verse, and they also introduced the meanings of the important words sarra, durra, kazimin al-ghayza, etc. at some depth and at great length. In the light of this, inshallah, we'll be able to understand the whole import of the verse much better. First of all, sarra, what does sarra means? Sarrahu is simply to give surur, as is well known in Urdu. Surur is pleasure of some sort, of any sort. Anything which pleases someone is called sarra. As-sururu wal-masarra musarratu was-sarru al-farahu, the same thing. As-sarra'u was-sarura'u Masarrato, that is again, as-sarra is also pronounced in a different form, was as-sarura, and both have the same meaning of pleasure, of ease, of comfort. Ardun sarraun means the most fertile piece of land. Surrato is also, not also, Surrato has been derived from the same root, but it has a different meaning, apparently unconnected meaning to the general usage. As-surra means that cord which binds placenta, which joins placenta with the embryo and which feeds the embryo. So that cord is called as-surra. Maybe because all that is good for the child is being drawn through the course of that channel, that cord. That is why it is called surra. Ad-darra, on the other hand, is the opposite of the word as-sarra. Exactly, it carries the meaning of hardship, difficulty, unpleasant things, and whatever is the converse of the word as-sarra is conveyed by the word ad-darra. Al-kazmo, which refer to the word wal-kazimin al-ghayza, in fact is the speech organs like throat, like the mouth cavity, etc. They are all covered by the word al-kazm, because from the breathing, in fact the breathing apparatus entirely is called kazm. This is surprising because normally al-kazm means anything which gives vent to something suppressed or held within, anything which makes an opening for the things which are contained something within you or within anything else. So kazm should have the meaning of giving opening to something which is kept closed or hidden. But the meaning of al-kazim and kazim are exactly opposite. Al-kazim is the person who suppresses the desires within him. Mostly it applies to anger and sorrow. If sorrow and anger are suppressed and kept well under control, then such a person would be called al-kazim. And similarly, the word kazim conveys the same meaning. For instance, in Surah Yusuf, when you read of the extreme sorrow and patience of Hazrat Yaqub at the loss and the dear memory of Hazrat Yusuf, you find the word wahuwa kazim. He was kazim. This word has been misunderstood and mistranslated by many non-Ahmadi scholars who translate it as he became blind, he lost his sight. This is not true. The dictionary does not support this meaning at all, and the usage elsewhere in the Holy Quran also rejects this. Al-Kazim is someone who suppresses anger or sorrow of the extreme degree and somehow controls his emotions and keeps them suppressed within. So Kazim here means he brought under control his sorrow and would not let it be seen by others. So that is also, this meaning is supported by the verse, Innama ashku bassi wa huzuni ilallahi. I only reveal my sorrow and cry myself out to Allah alone, not to others. So I weep and cry before Him, Innama ashku bassi wa huzuni, and relate my tales of sorrow to Allah and to Allah alone. So Kazim here means someone who suppresses, but not the one who suppresses it in all situations for everyone. So for those who suppress their fear, their anger or sorrow from among the believers, there is always the possibility of giving vent to them in the sight of Allah, in their prayers. And as such, the word Kazim would not be in contradiction of their giving vent to their sorrows before Allah in private. So this should be borne in mind, because I'll turn to that later. And except for the first meaning, which applies to the vocal cords and the mouth cavities, makharij they are called in Urdu or in Arabic, the places from which things are released out. All the rest of the meanings are exactly the opposite. Kazam al-Baba, for instance, means to shut the door. Al-Kuzum means to keep quiet, not to speak out, but to be silent, to stop talking. If the elementary system of a camel or some other animal, mainly camels, comes to a sort of stop, doesn't regurgitate, when the peristaltic movement is almost paralyzed, everything comes to a standstill, then the word kazam is used to express this state of affair. And so here the kazam means everything is held within tightly, because this state always creates this very uneasy feeling in animals that everything is locked up and they want some relief somehow and they can't. So again the meaning here is to close something tightly. Now let's turn to the whole verse, and in the light of a better understanding of these key words, let's try to understand the whole word in totality, whole verse in totality. وَالَّذِينَ إِذَا فَعَلُوا But before that, I'm sorry, I forgot to explain the word fahisha as against zalamu. No, I'm sorry, this is not the verse. Yes. This time I started looking at the second verse. That is why I thought I had forgotten something, but I haven't. الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ فِي السَّرَّاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ Those who spend in good cause and the cause of Allah, in prosperity or in adversity. وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ Those who control their angers. The word suppress perhaps is not the proper word to be used here. Who are in full command of their angers and their emotions, and they keep them well under control. Wal afina anan nas. Afa means who does not look at someone's crime or treats treats it as non-existent, as something wiped out altogether. So if you, even if knowingly, if you treat a crime as if it had not taken place, then the word afa would be applicable. So, wal afina anin nas, they overlook, or let's say, they do not seem to take notice of some people's crimes as if they had never committed it. So the word afa has a connotation of knowledge yet forgiveness in this sense, that you just ignore it altogether or forgive it completely. Wallahu yuhibbul muhsinin, and God loves those who do good deeds. This is the normal, generally acceptable translation, but I have other translation in mind, of which I'll speak later. Now this verse, although very simple and ordinarily understandable, has generated many debates among the commentators of different types, revolving around either the word Durra or the word Qazimin or the word Ghaz, or and so on and so forth. So I'll take these, I'll take up these controversies one after the other and explain to you what really, what the Holy Quran really wants to convey to us. First of all, there are among us who are apologists, who are unduly overmuch influenced by modern sciences and branches of knowledge, and they want to effect a compromise between the Quranic teaching and the modern sciences and learnings in a manner of inferiority complex. So they give in ground rather than really understanding the meaning of the Quran. They seem to lack the confidence that the Holy Quran is the word of God, who is also the creator of the entire universe. As such, he could never have said anything contrary to what he had created. So the Holy Quran is the book of nature itself. Fitrat Allah allati fatara nasa alayha. It speaks of the fitrat of Allah, God's nature, after which God has fashioned man, and the teaching is perfectly in accord with this creation of God, that nature of God. Now, some people are influenced by the modern psychological terms, and they say, oh, suppression, that is a very bad thing to do. How could the Holy Quran mean that true believers suppress their angers or their sorrow? Because if you suppress some desire, it is bound to lead to some internal complex diseases or complexes, etc., which are not good for man. So this school of thought is nowadays gaining ground in Europe in particular, among the students, school-going students or college-going students, and this so-called principle of total freedom to express what you feel and to do what you like encourages them to immoral behavior without any restraint whatsoever in controlling their desires, etc. So because this is a very important area, we must discuss it in detail first. The word suppression, I'll analyze it later on, but I think this is not the right translation. The right translation would be they have full command of their angers. they have full command of their sorrows and the feelings of dissatisfaction of any sort. So as such, they do not release them to their own detriment or to the detriment of the man as in general, people in general, because they have command and they have control. So as such, the meaning would be completely different from the one which emerged from the word suppression. Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ has pointed out that this verse should not be read independent of another similar verse in conjunction with which it has its full meaning explained and no objection can be raised from any angle after that. He reminds us that this verse should be understood in conjunction with the other verse, وَمَنْ أَفَا وَأَصْلَحَ فَأَجْرُهُ عَلَى اللَّهِ. Those who exercise afa, forgiveness, فَأَجْرُهُ عَلَى اللَّهِ, their reward is with their Lord. So it means, he has pointed out that afa wa aslaha have been bracketed by the Holy Quran elsewhere, which means that they suppress, they control their desires and give vent to them in right places. It does not mean that they never take their revenge. It does not mean that they always invariably forgive. So if you read it as وَالْقَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ, they always suppress their anger and عَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ, and forgive people for whatever crime they commit. This will create a society far more similar to the early Christian society, which were taught always to forgive and never to hit back, than the Muslim society we know the Quran has created. So any meaning which is contradictory to the general study of the Quran must be rejected. So here, Al-Qazimin al-Ghayza means those people who control their anger in a manner as to give vent to the such angers at the right places. Wal-Afina anin nas, and who forgive people at the right places. A balance is struck between afa and revelation and their anger or displeasure, and that perfect balance has a deep logic to control this. The logic mentioned in the Holy Quran is وَمَنْ أَفَا وَأَصْلَحَ. If your forgiveness promotes reform, if your forgiveness ends up in reformation vis-a-vis the person who has committed a crime, then it is always better to forgive. But if forgiveness causes encouragement of crime, if the criminal instead of abstaining from repeating the crime is unnecessarily encouraged by your forgiveness and commits the crime again and again, knowing that he will not be apprehended, then this is not Islamic teaching. So Qazimin al-Ghayza means they control their angers and use their anger at the right places. Now, as far as the suppression theory is concerned, let us return to it. What is suppression? If suppression means control of your desires or your natural reactions, favorable or unfavorable, to the outside situations which you observe, then this control, control of such desires, then suppression is a good word. It should not cause any problem in human psyche. It should not generate any complexity, any disease within you. Because whatever we see, we have a natural reaction to it. Either aversion is born within us, or desire to possess something or acquire something is born. So what do they mean by the term, by the advice, we must not suppress our natural feelings? If the meaning is that whatever you feel like you should be free to do or express, then it would create a very ugly situation in the entire world. It would be a very unrealistic world we will be talking about. The same children who at these modern schools are taught to give free vent to whatever they feel regarding the areas of morality and human conduct, when the question of abiding by the state law is discussed, they are given a completely different teaching. They are told that you must abide by the law of the land. For instance, if somebody steals, why should he be punished? Is he not giving vent to his natural urge, which urge is so innocent? You see something and you feel like having it. Why shouldn't you have it? This is the question. And if you should have it, why should you be punished? So, if you do not have it, what are you suppressing, or are you not suppressing anything? This is the question. If somebody annoys you in the street, you feel like striking back or hitting at him. This is the first natural reaction, which is much more violent in some people than in some others. So those with a natural violence bred into them, what experience that would be? That somebody offends them in the street and they are not permitted to hit back. Not to hit back, but to hit and express their displeasure by striking him bodily or even injuring him grievously. They have to suppress their desire. So everything you observe in the shops, for instance, you can't buy, but most of them you may like to have. So what about those shoplifters who occasionally lift a small thing here and there because they can't suppress their desire? Are they to be treated as criminals or not? This is the question. So this modern psychological jargon is just hocus pocus and meaningless. Only Freud was born out of an age which was going through this transition from rigidity in views to rationality and more open-mindedness, and as such he came out with such views which do not find any logical support when you re-examine them in detail. So suppression is a must. Suppression in the sense of control, and control in the sense of suppression where they tally with each other, it's not objectionable at all. But if without wisdom, without prudence, without control, you go on suppressing things, then of course they can cause disease. What sort of suppression that is, which is wrong? We must analyze it, and then the whole problem would be so easy to understand. I personally believe that when you are born with, when you experience some inner urge or aversion, if you are capable of convincing yourself of the logic of controlling your emotions, then it should not be considered as suppression. If you are given the wisdom, the code of moral understanding by which you can explain these things away. You want to get something, but your moral teaching gives you a logical reason, the logical process of evaluation, which reminds you, no, you'd like to have it all right, but you should not, for this or that reason. Then if you abstain from giving vent to your expression, your desire, it should not be treated as suppression. It cannot cause any psychological problems. That is culturing, that is training, that is instruction. So that is why the Holy Quran does not only gives law, but also teaches us the wisdom lying behind the law. As I have often quoted the verse, يُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةِ. The Holy Prophet does not only tell us the law as revealed to him from on high, but also satisfies our conscience by explaining the wisdom behind the law. So if you understand the philosophy of the law and abide by it, it cannot be suppression. But if, contrary to your views, you are told to suppress something of the wisdom of which you are not convinced, if you want to do something and you are told not to do it, that is what may cause disease, because it will create internal contradictions within your psyche. You think it's something good for me, and yet you cannot do it. So now you turn your eyes to your own small experiences in your homes, and now you'll begin to understand why some children become the prey to complex psychological diseases. Those parents who cannot convince them enough or instruct them enough about the moral wisdom of Islamic teachings, and yet go on demanding insistently that you must do this and must not do that, they always create problem children. So the fault may not always be with the parents, the fault may be with the crooked-minded children, or children who have been unduly over-influenced by the outside illogical society, who have been sold to such jargons and no suppression, it causes disease, that sort of thing. So these people, these children sometimes not fail but reject to listen. So they close their eyes and doors to logical explanations. So there again, the psychological problems can be born, but not because of the fault of their parents or because of the fault of the society or the children themselves. So suppression must be understood in the right context. Then you will get some. You will also gain lessons in ordinary experiences of life, how you should treat your children, how you should treat your society. Again, Islamic teachings requires a lot of explanation in many areas, as at least in the West. Their concept of normal behavior has drifted so far away from the genuine rational behavior which a peaceful society must follow, that from their vantage point they see the normal behavior is crooked and wrong somehow. So that is why a lot of effort is to be made to first understand yourself, the philosophy and the wisdom underlying the Islamic teachings, and secondly to be able to explain it to the others. Otherwise they will not agree with you. They say, you are people of the past and you are just believing in something rigidly and you don't know what life is. So this word Qazimin has led me to this discussion. Qazimin here does not mean that they suppress their desires despite the fact that they consider it proper to give them expression. So this is the complete definition of the word here. That means that the believers are those who, as long as they are convinced that control, moderation and exercise of patience is wise, is the dictate of the situation, they do it. But when they are not convinced of this, they let their emotions be released. And this is what we have seen in the entire life of Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sometimes, most often of course, he forgave, but sometimes he also expresses anger, but in a controlled way, in a moderate way. Now the second word is the word to be brought to our focus is the word ghaz, as against ghazab. This is also a very interesting study. Some people do not understand the difference between ghaz and ghazab. So the commentators, the classical commentators, have taken great pains to clarify these two, and I am indebted to them for what I am going to tell you. Like Imam Razi, etc., the very wise and very highly revered commentators have differentiated between the word ghaz and ghazab in a few ways. Number one, some say that ghaz is the feeling of extreme displeasure you experience within you, as long as it has not been given vent to, as long as it has not been expressed. So the unexpressed anger, unexpressed feeling of displeasure would always be called ghaz. But when you express your displeasure or anger, then it becomes ghazab. So ghazab is the expressed form of your displeasure at something or against someone. So what you see from outside is ghazab. What is happening within you, which no one else sees, is ghaz. And this is a very interesting and very logical distinction which they have made, and I fully agree with that. Again, they tell us that the word ghaz has a meaning of something boiling within, raging, seething with displeasure. So as long as you keep this ghaz to yourself, you have this situation of boiling and heartburn and seething, and perhaps this is what gives birth to the suspicion that control of all sorts are bad for the wealth of human psyche. But they do not fully understand the Islamic system. Islam, when it speaks of control, it does not speak of control unconditionally, even when the control is demanded, as I have explained. Yet it is not full control. You give vent to your feeling in prayers. So in a manner of speaking, it is similar to the institution of confession we find among the Roman Catholics. In Catholicism, confession to a degree plays as a remedy against living with your sin or something which if you do not feel happy about, whether it's anger or crime or anything. But I think in confession it is not ghaz which is being discussed, it is only the expressed aspect of your crime, not the crime which relates to your intentions. So it's only a part remedy. If you live with a crime and you cannot disclose it to the law enforcing agencies, it can create psychological problems within you if you do not share it with someone. So in Catholicism, they have the answer that all right, share it with your father's holy men and be relieved. The Holy Quran does not speak only of such crimes. The Holy Quran speaks of your intentions as well. The Holy Quran speaks of suppressed angers and suppressed grief alike, not only of crimes, and gives you an alternative which is the healthiest and the most wonderful in the sense that you do not part with your secret, sharing it with some human being with whom it will not be safe. You only part with your secret, sharing it with God, with whom things are safest. So you get unloaded, yet do not suffer from the consequences of such unloading before human beings. You know, it's a fact of Christian history that many a time the church fathers in Roman Catholic churches were employed by states to detect criminals. And this institution played havoc with the peace of innocent people who, in full confidence that they were speaking before a godly man who would only reveal our secret to God and to no human beings, knew little that this holy man was in fact the agent of the state and agent of the law enforcing agencies. So what they told them was further multiplied and exaggerated at the receiving end. They say if he has told this much, he must have committed much more. So he should be punished for what he might have committed, not what he admits. So the Spanish institution, used this institution of confession to the disadvantage of the innocent people and to the advantage of the cruel dictatorial regimes of Ferdinand and Isabella, etc., and many others. So Qazimin al-Ghaza, even when applied with all its full understanding, as I have explained, does not mean a complete final putting of lids on your emotions. According to Islam, still there is a room for you to get yourself unloaded and completely unloaded with hope, with looking forward to better possibilities by way of aid from Allah. So that is why a Prophet of Allah is shown to have said, Innama ashku bassi wa huzuni ilallahi. I won't share my grief and sorrows with human beings, with mortals, but at night I'd wake up and I cry out before Allah for what the enemies have done to me, or what our own people have, what I have suffered at the hands of my own people, and so on and so forth. A long tale of suffering at the hands of others patiently is being expressed in this short sentence. So this is the true meaning of Qazimin al-Ghaza, not that they have put the lid on so completely and regardless of the justification of the act or not. Now from some other angles, there are other controversies or different explanations. Let me read. According to Imam Raghib, Ghaz is not only what you feel just within, without giving expression, but it is the displayer of the utmost type, the extreme displayer. Hazrat Masih Maud has spoken of various aspects of the same question, so I am searching for those notes. Al-Hakam, volume 28, dated 31st July 1901, Hazrat Masih Maud has written, हमारी शरीयत का ये हुक्म है कि मौका देखो, अगर नरमी की ज़रूरत है खाक से मिल जाओ, अगर सख्ती की ज़रूरत है सख्ती करो, जहाँ अफ़्व से सलाहियत पैदा होती हो वहाँ अफ़्व से काम लो, नेक और बाहया खिदमतगार अगर कसूर करे तो बख्श दो, मगर बाज ऐसे खीरा तबाह होते हैं कि एक दिन बख्शो तो दूसरे दिन दुगना बिगाड़ करते हैं, वहाँ सजा जरूरी है. I have already explained it to you that according to Hazrat Masih Maud, which this means that if there are people, good-natured people, who are grateful to those who be kind to them, who have that sense of appreciation of goodness when it is done to them, such people deserve forgiveness, and Allah likes those who forgive such people and do not take offense so seriously against them as to punish them in all situations, all circumstances. So most often they should be forgiven. But there are people whom you forgive, if you forgive, they are encouraged in crime, like in ordinary daily home experiences at our homes. Some children are like that. So the rod must not be, they must not be spared rod. They must be punished. And the word afina anin nas is not unconditional. Another very interesting commentary which Masih Maud has made, he said, this is something which I have never read anywhere else. Masih Maud points out that the wisdom of this teaching, Qazimin al-Ghaz, is much deeper and much wider than you can normally imagine. Those people who are given up to expressing their displeasure immediately, they are the opposite of Qazimin al-Ghaz. Such people are gradually deprived of decent talk and decent behavior. So if you give expression to your displeasure immediately without control on the plea that this is natural and you must not suppress yourself, then such people always end up as people of ugliest behavior. At the slightest rebuke or offense, they become so harsh to others. They always overdo their expression of displeasure. And such people are not fit for decent company. These are the people who cause problems in their homes, they cause reactions among their wives and their children, they make the home a hell rather than a heaven, and the society suffers at their hands. So Qazimin al-Ghaza is a must to begin with. Qazimin al-Ghaza means at the height of the moment, at the height of displeasure, their first reaction is to stop giving, give vent to what you feel within. They take their time, they consider. And this is exactly what Hazrat sallallahu alaihi wasallam has advised us. He said that when you feel angry at something, you must try to suppress it and do not give expression to it immediately, because that is the moment where you are always inclined to give exaggerated expression, exaggerated responses. So the advice said, The advice is that if you can exercise constraint, do it and get over with it. If you can't, then you better ask for a glass of water and have a few sips of water to cool yourself down. And if that does not help you either, then you sit down and feel a bit calmer. And maybe lying down is also mentioned or not, I don't remember. But sitting down is just certainly mentioned. Why so? Because if you look back at your own experiences of extreme anger or even lesser degrees of anger, you will remember that at that time the first natural response was far more exaggerated than after a few days. If you gave yourself time, even after a few hours, you will think that if you had acted in haste at the time that you felt the displeasure, you must have overreacted and must have even transgressed against the person who had committed a crime against you. So al-Qazimin al-Ghaiza has also this meaning. And this meaning has been pointed out only by Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam. It means at the height of the reaction, at the start of the cause to have generated anger in you, exercise restraint, control, wait, and do not act hastily. If you do that, then you are likely to end up among those who are considered as afina anin nas, whom Allah loves best. Because such people who once the crisis is over become so happy at this control, this being able to control themselves, that better inner urges and better inner human responses begin to emerge and come to surface. And after a while one thinks, all right, now that I have not hit back at the moment of the crisis, if I forgive, how will I feel? And if one considers this question seriously, he always, not always, but in many cases, he would find that to forgive is the best revenge. Not only to make the person repent who has committed a crime against you, but also best revenge in the sense that you have ended up as a nobler person than before. You have a feeling of having done something which makes you a better person than before. So the process of afu, after the control of the initial response, leads you on to better things in life. And the end process is mentioned in the verse, Wallahu yuhibbul muhsinin, and Allah loves those who do good deeds. Now there is one other question, why this verse seems to be unconditional, and why in this verse at least there is no mention of any conditions applied to suppression of anger or forgiveness to others. This seems a general course mention. This is how the Muslim should do. I personally feel the key to this understanding this lies in the word muhsin. Normally people understand the word muhsin to mean somebody who does good deeds. But the word muhsin does not simply mean that. It means that who remove evil and replace it with good. If you remove some blemishes from your face and make up your face, that would be the process of ihsan. If you improve the quality of your moral conduct, that would be ihsan. Ihsan simply means to bring husn, beauty, where there was ugliness before this. So the word Muhsinin, Wallahu Yuhibbul Muhsinin, explains everything here. It means, remember this, that if your act of suppression does not create goodness but ends up in encouraging evil, then you are not a Muhsin. If your act of forgiveness also encourages crime, then you cannot be defined as a Muhsin. So whatever you do, remember this, the controlling condition to your behaviors would be Wallahu Yuhibbul Muhsinin. If during your suppression of anger and during your expression of forgiveness, you always create goodness and remove evil, then you deserve Allah's love, not otherwise. So the key to this dilemma is already contained in this verse, though seldom observed. Let me see if any other point worthy of discussion has been omitted by me. Just a minute. Again, there is another fine distinction made by Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam regarding when suppression could possibly be leading to disease and when it will not. And this is a very beautiful and very fine distinction between a suppression which can cause problems and a suppression which on the other hand will do you a lot of good. He says, Sahal bin Maaz reports from his father, who heard Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying that any person who is capable of expressing, of taking his revenge, the person who is capable of punishing a person who has displaced him, yet exercises control, such a person should be considered as belonging to the very best among those who behave morally. Ala Ra'usil Khalaiq, not morally. Such a person at the day of resurrection would be in the forefront of the people whom Allah would like. All the khalaiq, of all the creation, he will be in the front line. And Allah would ask him, or Allah would invite him to help himself of whatever he pleases. And in another verse it is said that God would enrich him immensely with peace and faith. In another tradition we find لَيْسَ الشَّدِيدُ بِالسُّرْعَةِ إِنَّمَا الشَّدِيدُ الَّذِي يَمْلِكُ نَفْسَهُ عِنْدَ الْغَضَبِ. That a warrior, a powerful, strong wrestler, a champion in wrestling, is not the one who throws someone on his foes. On his back. He is not a man who should be considered as a warrior wrestler, as a champion wrestler. A wrestler is the one, or a champion wrestler is the one who defeats his own rising anger at the time when it at its height. If one wrestles with his own anger and defeats it, he is the champion warrior. So the meaning of the distinction between a situation leading to psychological complexes and a situation which is to be applauded and to be highly praised, and which is a healthy situation, is made in these two hadith, in these two instructions of Muhammad. So remember, if you are in a position to take revenge and yet exercise control, then it's not suppression in the wrong sense. It is a healthy sign, and it is not bad for your psyche. Again, to control anger yourself with your intentions, not out of helplessness, would not lead you to psychological diseases. It will in fact train you further to become a more psychologically powerful person. It would not weaken you. It will strengthen your personality. So these distinctions must be understood as explained by Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, praising this tendency in another place, has said, according to Ibn Umar, once Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam explained that anyone who drinks a sip of anything may drink something good in the sight of Allah, may think something bad in the sight of Allah. This is the situation which he describes. But he says nobody has ever taken a sip more pleasing to Allah than the one who has sipped his own anger, who has drunk his own anger. This is a form of expression which means who has controlled it completely, has not let it pass on, but he has swallowed, as they say, swallow insult. So it's not insult, but any natural urge from within, any response, violent response to any situation. So if somebody controls it and swallows it, that swallowing, according to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is the most pleasing swallowing to Allah. So how could it lead to any disease? It's impossible. So those who allege this, they don't understand the meaning of suppression at all. Now there is something here which even has pleased the hostile commentators. This verse has presented something which even the hostile commentators have failed to applaud. Have not failed to applaud. So in this connection, I think it's very, isn't it? Yes. Very, as you know, he is very hostile to Islam. Here he says, it is related to Hassan, the son of Ali, that the slave, having once thrown a dish on him, boiling hot, as he sat at a table, and fearing his master's resentment, fell immediately to his knees. This is his imagination. In the tradition, it's not said fell to his knees. He has imagined this according to his own customs. But anyway, and repeated these words, "Paradise is for those who bridle their anger." While the verse he repeated was, "Wal afina anin nas." No paradise was mentioned here at all. Allah loves those who forgive. And Hassan answered, "I am not angry." All right, I am not angry with you. In fact, here he had quoted the first part of the verse, "Wal kazimin al-ghayza," those who suppress their anger or control their anger. He had just said this when Hazrat Hassan responded immediately by saying, "I have no anger against you." Then the slave proceeded by reciting the remaining part of the verse, "Those who forgive men, wal afina anin nas." At this, Hazrat Hassan said, "I forgive you." Then the slave finished the verse by adding, "For God loveth the beneficent." "Since it is so," replied Hassan, "I give you your liberty and 400 pieces of silver, a noble instance of moderation and generosity." So this verse has even elicited praise from the mouth of one who is given up mostly to abuses against Islam. Now this episode also points out at another area which we should focus on. What is the meaning of "I am not angry and I forgive"? If one is not angry, does that not mean forgiveness? And if is not one angry, why should there be need of forgiveness at all? So now we turn back to the verse. It says, "Wal kazimin al-ghayza wal afina anin nas." Kazimin al-ghayza does not mean that they are not angry. So he has mistranslated it. Where he has mistranslated it, he never said, "I am not angry." He said, "All right, I suppress my ghaz. I will not show my ghaz against you. I will not express my displeasure against you." This was the meaning of what he said. Wal afina anin nas leads to another step in the process, which again answers sufficiently those critics who say suppression is bad. According to Islamic scenario, when you suppress your anger, you have not done everything so far. That is the only first step. After that, if you turn to clearing the anger itself from within you and wiping it out and sweeping all traces of anger, that would be best for you. So no possibility of suppressed anger ever turning into disease. So afina anin nas can only happen when anger is completely wiped out from within. Otherwise you can't be afina anin nas. Then you can only be munafiqina alan nas. You can be hypocritical, not really forgiving. So this episode has given me a new angle to treat this verse, and with which I am very satisfied. In fact, reading in this process, connected that stages of a phenomenon which are revealed to you, that the moment you bring your anger to command and control, you must not consider the battle won. That is the stage 1. Turn immediately to the stage 2 and try to forgive somebody. And if you really forgive somebody, do it like afin. Afin means those who wipe out all traces of displeasure and anger. So not only be outwardly kind, but wipe out all traces of anger. This can be done through a process of self-examination, through a process of self-criticism, of judging yourself to be in similar situations and committing the same crimes by mistake or by intent, and also looking at human nature in its larger perspective, and seeing how human beings err and make mistakes here and there. So in this context, you can better understand the phenomenon of crime, and you are then in a better position to wipe out the traces of your anger to a degree that you become benign and kind to others, and instead of taking your revenge in negative terms, you try to do something good for them. So that is why Wallahu yuhibbul muhsinin in the same order is the final stage. Having finished with their anger in totality, having forgiven people not only outwardly but inwardly as well, from within, then they begin to feel the pleasure of this nobility. Then they don't stop at this, and they want to show them some kind of actness which is completely unrelated to their act of crime. In fact, opposite to that. So Hazrat Hassan, understanding the import of this verse, immediately gave him some money from himself as a reward. So a crime was rewarded apparently. And forgiveness, according to the same commentator, I'll come to that later, does not lead to reward. Here he appreciates the situation, he praises it. In fact, he is enamored by this act of kindness, of forgiveness, which leads to a reward. But when Allah rewards the repentant, then remembering the Christian teaching that God cannot forgive, only it is Jesus Christ whose agency has to be sought for seeking forgiveness and reward, he says this is illogical. Repentance cannot generate reward. While here, through a logical process, we have shown and established that repentance to repentance and forgiveness does lead to reward as well. And a nobler personality develops from within you if you follow these three steps. But of that, inshallah, later, when in the following verse, I think we'll come across this commentary of Veri and we'll treat it there. Only one thing is left. What is the connection of this verse with the previous verses of the Holy Quran? And the following ones, of course. Just the previous verse spoke of maghfirat from Allah, forgiveness from Allah. It says, وَسَارِعُوا إِلَى مَغْفِرَةٍ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ وَجَنَّةٍ أَرْضُهَا السَّمَاوَاتُ وَالْأَرْضُ أُعِدَّتْ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. Hasten towards forgiveness from Allah. So just to say hasten is not enough. How can we hasten towards forgiveness from Allah? The following verse, the verse which we have just discussed, explains the meaning of how you can hasten. If you become of those who suppress their anger and are not given up to the inner spontaneous demands for revenge, etc., then they take their time and then they forgive and completely forgive. Then they take the next step forward towards the creation of Allah and do good deeds to them unrelated to their conduct, behavior to you. They don't deserve such benign treatment, and yet you are benign to them. These are the people who understand the meaning of Sari'u ilallah, Sari'u ila maghfiratun min Allah. They hasten towards bakshish from Allah, because if you treat your subordinates and your fellow beings like this, it becomes impossible for God not to treat you like this. Because he's much kinder than you are. Because he's the source of all goodness. So it's the logical conclusion that if you want such a treatment at the hands of God, you should treat your fellow human beings and his creatures like this, and then of course Allah will treat you even more, what I should say, even more generously than you could ever treat your fellow human beings. So inshallah, tomorrow we will discuss the following verse because already it is time.